go through this with you all this morning. It's to do with one of Scotland's biggest poltergeist cases ever. Now, it happened when I was only 3 years of age, so I didn't get a hands-on until later on. I was involved with it later on. I did 3 investigations, which will come to that moment. So I was only 3. It happened in 1960. Massive case. Today is going to be the prep. It's going to be just telling you about how the case evolved. And tomorrow you're actually going to hear the recordings of the Sauchie Poltergeist, the noises, etc. You're also going to hear from the people who were there, Dr. Nisbet, Dr. Logan, and the Reverend T.W. Lund, who is going to tell you an audio all about it. And when the audio is playing, I'll be putting up slides of just to illustrate what they're saying. It's from a BBC Radio Scotland show back in 1960 at the height of the Sauchie Poltergeist. So that's all tomorrow. So remember, you got to come back tomorrow. So this is the kind of gingerly steps for this. Now, whenever I give a talk, hands up who's seen me before, by the way. I should have went, who's not seen me? Who's not seen me? Okay, right, fantastic. So most of you have. I'm off the wall and stuff like that. Yeah, it happens, isn't it? I always, when I give a talk, I always like to inform my audience a wee bit about who SPI is, that's Strange Phenomena Investigations. So this is a wee catch-up. The aims of SPI are basically to collect, research and publish accounts relating to most aspects of strange phenomena and to purposely endeavour to try and come up with some answers to account for what at present eludes us. Now, we at SPI, we do not hold or express any preconceived ideas as to the nature of the events of which we research. We tend to keep an open mind. I'm the first Scotsman to lecture on UFOs in Ireland, Galway and Carrick-on-Shannon 2004, and also in Laughlin, Nevada back in 2009, and also France in Strasbourg 2010, Holland, Utrecht in 2010 as well. One of the few guys in the world to have gone down in the Loch Ness submarine to a depth of just under 500 feet. And I have given this lecture before. I've given it here, Ashley, have I? Oh, there we have. And it's a wonderful, wonderful experience to go down in this submarine with a frontal nose cone, glass, toughened glass, right down to the loch floor. But that's another talk. But it was a wonderful experience. I'm the author of 8 books. I've just finished, here's a wee plug. I've just finished my 9th book called Please Leave Us Alone. It's about an Irish family who's terrorised by shadow beings and somebody known as the Hat Man, this shadowy figure with this fedora-type hat appearing in the room. Horrible, horrible situation for this Irish family. That should be coming out, fingers crossed, 2 to 3 weeks' time. So look out for that on Amazon. That's the plug over. Again, when I talk to my audience, I always like to start these talks by saying, I was a skeptic. I did not believe there were any validity into claims pertaining to ghosts, poltergeists, UFOs. What a load of rubbish. There are no such things. Oh dear, how wrong was I? How wrong was I? Because as soon as you put yourself in that ballpark, and I've said before, I've been slapped by nothing. I've had my hair pulled by nothing. I've been kicked by nothing. Because I put myself in the ballpark. Because I was there at the time to try and help people who were inundated with poltergeist phenomena, ghostly phenomena. I'm not an expert. I was dealing with BBC Scotland just before I came down to Bournemouth, and they say, so we're going to clash as an expert. I said, I'm not an expert. Nobody in this field of paranormal is an expert. We're just people who love the subject and broil and put all that subject all over you, and it doesn't make to say that you're an expert. Now, of course, hope you can see that there. Not all ghosts are like the TV Casper's the Friendly Ghosts, much as perhaps we'd like that to be. I've worked with cases where ghosts have, or spirits, depending how you want to differentiate that paradigm, is they have interacted with people and scratched people, and you'll see some slides in a wee while all about that. So not just friendly in that, they can harm you. More so poltergeist cases, as we'll come to in a moment. Sadly, you can't see that because there's ambient light in the room there, but what that says is what scares us. When I was a boy growing up in Scotland, I was always fearful that there might be something lurking under the bed, lurking in the shadows, in the cupboards. Oh, is it a monster? Is it a ghost? And I think to a degree, each and every one of us had that kind of wee feeling when we were younger, growing up, I'm a wee bit, that's dark in there, what could be lurking in there? So, yeah, but as you grow older, you come to recognise the fact that, you know, there are no such things as monsters under the bed, etc. I hope not, anyway. Not in my bedroom tonight, anyway. But imagine walking down the street. You're walking down the street and you encounter this fella. Not very nice for sure. I know I wouldn't want to see him like that. You know, I think he's had too many drinks in a pub in Bournemouth by the looks of him. Or this guy, equally quite strange and bizarre. Does that frighten us? Yeah, I'm sure it does to a degree. Now, I'm just going to talk about early poltergeist reports. I don't think you'll see this so much at the back. That's what that says there. But the poltergeist effects and disturbances has been with us probably since time immemorial. But some of the most early recording ones was this one, the Tedworth drummer of 1662, when a local landowner, John Muffetson, he owned a house in Tedworth, it's now called Tibworth in Wiltshire, and they reported many poltergeist effects, more so with a sound of a drummer. And you've got these kind of evil little creatures up here drumming. That's how they portrayed it back in the 17th century there. This one here, this is a strange one. It's the town of Innercosthwaite, can't say that. It's situated in the centre of County Wexford, and a lot of poltergeist effects transpired in that particular house. This is back in July 1910. Now, yes, some of the poltergeist effects in this slide do happen, but not them all. What I mean by that is, if you look up here, you've got, we can't see it so well perhaps, you've got a cat and a dog suspended on the ceiling. This, as far as I know, in most poltergeist effects, you don't get that. Maybe you do. Maybe I'm not aware of them. But I'm not aware of them. Certainly with the chairs, the movement of objects, the displacement of objects, things falling off the shelf, etc. Yeah, you get that. And a lot of poltergeist reports as well. This one was from a 14-year-old servant of the Todd Skinny family in Shergas, Algeria. Again, experienced many poltergeist effects. Again, you're looking at 1911. You've got pots and pans displacing, moving up into the air in front of this terrified servant of that Italian family, Algerian family. So you do get this type of effect throughout the world, for sure. And can you imagine, and this photograph here that I'm displaying at the moment is from the internet, so I don't put any claims of any validity on this. But this is what somebody photographed, a mother holding her child, and she's looking at this pot and pan. That's a pair of scissors up there, just free floating in the air. So again, if that's, but just before we go any further actually, has anybody here experienced any poltergeist effects in their house? Put your hands up. Lady there? Oh my goodness, quite a few. So you know what's going on with that. And again, if you walk into a house, you wouldn't, if you saw something like that moving about, you know, that would probably scare you as well. It certainly would me, because you don't expect that. You don't expect to see things like that moving about in the family home. Again, this is a scene from the movie Poltergeist, which we'll come to in a moment. And they portrayed the poltergeist effects of the movement of all these records and ornaments, etc. You do get that in some, but not all, poltergeist effects. And again, that must be terrifying for anybody who walks into a room and sees that, because obviously with your normal haunting, you're just seeing a whimsical ghost. And this is completely different. And that's the thing, because poltergeists have been made into many a motion picture. And I'm going to look at some at the moment. Well, the main one, of course, was Poltergeist, the young girl. And obviously, like Braveheart, and a lot of salt and pepper put on movies, it's not all true. And of course, you don't get things like this hand coming through, reaching through from the television and trying to grab this wee girl. Thankfully, you don't get that. Here she's holding on to the bedstead. Poltergeist, or some evil force, has captured her and trying to pull her into this kind of vortex, or this area in the house, and she doesn't obviously want to go. This is it here, just another slide of that. She's getting moved into this vortex. Thankfully, that's not part and parcel of a poltergeist effect, but that's the movies for you. That is how the movies portray the poltergeist effect. And as I say, not true at all. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but back in 1973, that movie scared the you-know-what out of me. Because this was before. You had all the fanciful CGI effects and all the special effects that you get with movies, which, whoa, looks amazing today. But in 1973, you really didn't have a lot of those effects. And when I saw that movie in Stirling, at the Allen Park Picture Cinema in Stirling, there were St. John's ambulances outside, carting people out the cinema. The girls had fainted and everything. I don't know about today, because you see so many movies today, it's totally different. But that was a scary movie, as you will see just now. The Green Pea Soup, a stalwart motion picture film. And it happened, this is young Reagan here. This is a true case, but it didn't happen to a young girl, as we know. It happened to a small boy. And there was a lot of changes with the movie. Another iconic image coming from this movie was of Reagan slowly moving up off that bed. And again, when you're seeing a movie in 1973 for the first time, yeah, that was quite scary. Or when she opens her eyes, she's all scarred and she's all like this. Very scary. I mean, it's not Poltergeist, of course. This is just showing you a wee bit of how cinema would portray these movies. I'm getting scared already. I'm just looking at it. And another iconic, exactly, another iconic image from that film was of Reagan propelling, getting thrown up on her bed. And sadly, just in a very, very, very few cases, you have instances where that's been recorded to happen. I've never worked on those cases, but allegedly they do happen. Another iconic image, this one here, the 90-degree revolving of the head. And so I hope none of you do that tonight, by the way. Don't you be scared me tonight, yeah? In the bar, get me a pint and that. Here you go, Malcolm. Another one here, and you can see the room was that cold that her breath was frosting up in the air. And she's speaking to, or she's turning around in front of one of these priests who was doing the exorcism. Again, one of the priests is doing the sign of the cross on her head, and she just rises up from bed and looks at him. Now, we're going to come to a bit of the film. It only lasted about 2 to 3 seconds, and I'll show you in a moment. But this 2 to 3 seconds was absolutely, really frightening for me compared to the rest of what I've just showed you just now. Let me set the scene. The scene is this. I think one of them was called Father Karras. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you've got the old priest there, the younger priest there, and what you're looking at on this slide here is they're knackered. They've just been to try and do some exorcism to Reagan in that room there, so they're just taking time out just to recuperate. And when the younger father there goes through this door, I'll show you the slide in a moment, he's absolutely gobsmacked to see a scene that he didn't expect to see. This takes a wee minute to come up, this slide. That's here. Instead of seeing Reagan in the bed, young girl, he sees his mother. She had died about 2 days previous to that, and he had put her in an institution or a home, and she was flat lying on the bed. This was only 3 seconds tops. Like that, and then it went away. She's lying flat, and she just rose up and said, Dimmy, why you do that to me, Dimmy? Why you do this to me, Dimmy? And then, poof, it went away. It was back. And I don't know about the rest of you, but that scared the you-know-what out of me. And another part of the movie was, like, you get subliminal, did I say that right? I think I did, 10 points. Subliminal, twice. Advertising and TV adverts. Well, it's not so much advertising, but you go flashes of an evil face coming into the movie. And I don't know if any of you who watched the movie can remember that. This is what you saw. So you're looking at something like this. She's rising up, Reagan's rising up from bed, and then bang, you get this face. Does anybody remember that? No? Yeah? No? No? Well, look, watch it again. You'll see that only lasts for seconds. Just goes like that, bang, and it goes. And they do that in advertising for commercials, but obviously that was not a commercial. It was just a kind of, that would go in your brain. You'd just more remember that. Now, obviously, we're on our way to the Sauchie Poltergeist. And one of the biggest cases or the best book on poltergeist is the Sauchie Poltergeist. And that's a cracker of a book. There's many books on poltergeists throughout the UK, but it's written by two good mates of mine, Michael Halliwell and Darren W. Ritson. I'm not going to, I haven't got the time to speak about that case in any great length here today, but it's just to show you what I said earlier, that ghosts, spirits are not always nice to you. The aspect of the Sauchie Poltergeist, it was really destructive. It actually threw this kitchen knife at people. It never went to harm them, admittedly. It never went in their bodies. It just went by them. That was a big, big, significant part of the Sauchie Poltergeist. And it was very scary because the guys themselves saw that. They saw the knife coming out the drawer. Wee bit crazy, this scene. So what you're looking at here, ladies and gentlemen, is the poltergeist would set up scenes. They walk into the bedroom, and the bedroom's fine, and they walk in it about 5 minutes later, and it's a wee scene. You've got this wee toy rabbit holding a knife over a little chicken's neck. You can see it there. Now, skeptics quite right would say, Malcolm, how do you know that the family couldn't have set up that scene? Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm still a skeptic, even though I firmly believe in life after death, because I set out to disprove it. I didn't think there were any validity to it. How wrong was I, silly Malcolm? The evidence is overwhelming for life after death. I've spoke to clinical nurses, doctors, near-death experienced people, out-of-body experience, which is just possibly the beginning to an afterlife, come back. It's not your time, come back. The evidence is there, and that's why, I mean, I'm preaching to the converted this morning, but when I give a talk up in Scotland to guys who are probably not so sincere and think it's a load of rubbish, that can be a hard crowd, but I'm not here really to change anybody's views. All I'm here to do is to give you that information. It's to give you the information to digest. And if you think it's rubbish, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's not a problem. But it set up scenes like that. I mentioned about the poltergeist was destructive and it can cause harm. Well, this is a guy, it was his house, and he's, my back, what's the matter with your back? It's painful, it's painful. So Mike Halliwell, that's him here, one of the researchers, lifted the guy's shirt up, and his back suddenly started to get scratch marks in full view of the witnesses, and also on his chest, as you will see here. Well, I hope you can. Ambient light, sorry if you can't see that slide so well, but there are scratch marks coming down the gentleman's chest. Can you see that there yet? And I mean, that's a tough part to be in a house that's doing something like that, very, very destructive with a poltergeist, you know. Now that brings us to the Sauchie Poltergeist. But first, the 1960s. What was it like when the Campbell family moved from Ireland to Scotland? What was the 1960s like? Well, a big, big change from obviously today, as we know. First and foremost, the average house price back in 1960, just £2,530. My God, you could get quite a few houses for that today, couldn't you? And also, a pint of beer, I wish it was the same today, is only 8 pence. And that's a pub in Sauchie. I now live in, I've lived in England for 23 years. I just went back to Scotland in February. But I lived in Hastings latterly there, lovely wee place. And, but I'm now back in Scotland. Not lost the accent as well. So it was only about 8 pence back there. Also, a loaf of bread was just 5 pence back in 1960. And that's the old Sauchie High Street there. It's all totally changed now. It's nothing at all like that at the moment. Cigarettes, packet of Player cigarettes was only 25 pence. For all you smokers out there. Don't you wish those days were back again? Eh? And of course, the 60s were known as the swinging 60s. Not in that pretense, by the way. Maybe it's today. But no, of course, you had the Kinks, the Beatles, the Stones, the Pink Floyd, early Genesis, etc. And it was a massive time. I mean, I was born in 1957, so I really was just a young kid growing up in the 60s. But it must have been an amazing time just especially with the girls wearing all the gear. I mean, what made, what made us men very happy and comfortable looking was the miniskirt of 1960s, a very joy to behold for us blokes. We're very sad, I know, we're very sad, but there you go. And of course, on December 9th, 1960, we had the very, very first broadcast of Coronation Street come out. And that was way back. And you've got Ina Sharples there. Who remembers Ina Sharples? Yeah. Who doesn't remember Ina Sharples? The young kids in the block, right? Okay, fair enough. She's before my time as well. And also we had a wee group at the time called the Beatles. They may have been called the Silver Beatles at the time. Back in 1960, 62, they came up to Scotland, accompanied by Johnny Gentle, who was a good-looking singer at the time. And they played the Alloa Town Hall. That's maybe about, what, half a mile to a mile from where I live at the moment. So they weren't known there. I think they had come back from Hamburg, but they weren't really known at the time. So as I say, they were accompanying this singer called Johnny Gentle. Who remembers Johnny Gentle? Nobody? Johnny Gentle, no? What? Anyway, anyway, there he is, a young George Harrison. He's round about 14 years of age there on Alloa Town Hall stage, and as Johnny Gentle's wooing all the girls here. And that's all right.
Shirley's fallen over and cut herself.
Is she?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not so good.
Shirley's fallen over and cut herself. Just send her a bit of healing.
Yeah.
It's all right. Sorry.
No, that's okay, actually. And it now brings me to part one of the biggest poltergeist case in Scotland, as far as I'm concerned. There are other cases in Scotland, just bear with me a moment. But this by far is the most... people, when I speak to journalists, people say, when they see the word Sauchie, how do you say it? Is it Sauchie? Is it Sauchie? They can't say it, you know. I say, well, you've got to split it up and say two words. Say saw, as in a saw, and key, Sauchie. And that's how you pronounce it. Okay, massive case. Part one of which is this morning. Part two tomorrow with all the audio recordings and some video footage. Don't miss it. The principal witnesses in this amazing case were as follows. You had Virginia Campbell, who is the main principal witness. She was 11 years of age at the time. Her cousin Margaret, she was 9. Her cousin Derek, 11. And Virginia's mother, Annie. Her father, Thomas, he was aged 30. And Annie's sister, Isabella. And Virginia Campbell's teacher, that's right, her teacher, and we'll come to that. Incredible. It wasn't just in the house, happened in the school. Margaret Stewart, local minister, Reverend T.W. Lund, GP, Dr. W.H. Nisbet, another doctor, Dr. William Logan, and his wife, Sheila Logan, a qualified doctor, a number of Church of Scotland ministers. Wow. They saw all this themselves, went, what's going on here? And the classmates of Virginia Campbell at school, and I've interviewed a number of her classmates to get the full story. So where does the story start? Well, it actually starts in a small rural area in Maville in County Donegal in Ireland. And the story goes that they're going to relocate to Scotland with a family. And me, Virginia, 11 years of age, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. My friends are here. My wee dog Toby's here. And I just don't want to leave my friends and all that. But it was set in stone. The family was going to move, the mother and the father was going to move over to Sauchie, where I'm currently living. In fact, I don't live that far away from this house, point of fact. Anyway, it was all made, it was all decided, yes, we're going to Scotland, and that's the end of it. This is not the farm. The father stayed behind to sell the family farm. That's not the actual farm, that's just an illustration of a typical farmhouse, an Irish farmhouse back in 1960. So it was just really her and her mother, Virginia and her mother, that left Ireland. The father would join them, but not at the moment. He stayed back to sell the family farm. So when the mother came to when she came to Sauchie, she was employed as a cleaner at the nearby Dollar Academy. So the mum's away half the time. So she's just with, her aunt and uncle. So her mother was away, and she had lodgings in Dollar, so she didn't always stay in the house. She was staying a small house in Dollar, and we'll come to the aspect of Dollar in a minute as well. This is the actual house. The house on the left, a typical Scottish Special Council house of the 1960s. It's pretty much the same. I think they've got a small veranda sticking out there. The fence is all different, the garden's different, etc. But that was the main house, the destructive house that happened in 1960. This is the only photograph of young Virginia Campbell that I've managed to get over the years. I've tried ever so hard speaking to classmates of Virginia. Have you got any school photographs? No, I did have Malcolm, but they were thrown out years ago. So I'm still trying to get photographs of Virginia. Some of the photographs you'll see later were taken off a TV program when she was 15, but this is round about that age when the events happened. So what happened when it all really started, right? She's no longer in Scotland. On November the 22nd, 1960, she was in her bed with her cousin Margaret. Virginia's aunt and uncle were downstairs, and the two girls are lying in bed together, and they heard scratching noises and banging noises, and they're going, what the hell is that? What's going on there? Then they heard footsteps going across the linoleum floor. Another 10 points for me saying linoleum. And they heard that, what's going on here? So they got up out of bed and they started running down the stairs. And as they did so, it was like the sound of a heavy medicine ball. Back in 1960, you got these big muckle medicine balls that used to throw each other. They weighed a ton. It was something like that, thumping down behind them. So they ran into the living room and said to the aunt and uncle, there's something weird going on, there's something happening, somebody's in our room. And of course the aunt and uncle thought, what a load of rubbish, they're just kids being kids, you know, there's no validity to this. They thought they were just making it up. So anyway, the aunt and uncle took them up the stair into their bedroom, and as soon as they did, they were disturbed to see the bedstead moving in the bedroom as well. So they moved the girls into another room in the house, and the same effects happened. Not only the bed's head going like that, but the footsteps and everything was happening. And that's when the aunt and uncle realised, what the hell have we got here? This house has been fine until the Campbells have come into it. What's going on here? So November the 23rd, Virginia was kept off school, and she was sitting in the living room when a sideboard, which was next to Virginia, slowly moved out. A sideboard, big heavy sideboard, moved out about 5 inches. It went back to the same location again. And that night, when everybody was in bed, again there were loud knocks and bangings coming from all over the house. And even these noises were allegedly heard by the neighbours next door. They could hear these noises. So it's all starting to happen. It's all starting to transpire. Now at this point they decided, well, okay, things are getting really bad here. What do we do? Well, we can only go to the local minister. And the local minister was this chap here called the Reverend T.W. Lund. And he was called in at midnight. And he, that most of these knockings were again from the headboard of Virginia's bed. He also saw the displacement of the covers on Virginia's bed, which I'll come to more in a moment. And also this gentleman here, Dr. William Logan, he was called to the house. And when he saw the headboard moving, he grabbed it and he could physically feel it moving. But no, the girls were not doing this. The girls were not nowhere near the headboard. They're lying in the bed terrified with this headboard moving. And then he observed, now back in 1960, some of the older members of the audience may remember this. I can remember it myself actually. Most people had a big linen chest at the foot of their bed or somewhere in their room, and that kept all the pillows and your bed sheets and extra bed linen, etc. More or less everybody had it in the 60s. Well, this thing here, that's an illustration. That's not the actual linen chest. But this one, they said it was about 27 inches long, 17 inches high, and about 14 inches wide. And like I say, it was full of bed linen. Started to rise up off the floor of its own volition. Nobody was near it. Nobody was to the left or to the right. And it moved across the linoleum floor about 18 inches. So say it was against there, it moved about 18 inches and went back again. Unbelievable. And at that point, as if things couldn't get any more stranger, They did. Because this lid of this linen chest rose up of its own volition and just started thump, 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 and down in front of Reverend T.W. Lund and also the minister and the doctor as well. They've all seen that at separate times when they're in their house. And like I say, it's like as if some invisible hands were holding the top of this linen chest and moving it up and down. Absolutely incredible. And when Dr. Logan suggested that Virginia's niece Margaret go and sleep beside her, because the cousin and Virginia didn't always sleep together, they had their own bedrooms, but when he suggested that if Margaret go and sleep beside her, an intense burst of knocking and bangings were heard throughout the room as well. So clearly something was going on in the family home. But what was behind it? Nobody really knew about a poltergeist at that time. Was it a ghost? What's going on? Because like I said, the house was free of all these things prior to the Campbell family moving in. This is former Dr. Sheila Logan, and that's her husband William. We did a show with the BBC One show just over a year or so ago about the Sauchie Poltergeist. It's still to be transmitted. It was going to be transmitted at the start, but COVID, the first batch of COVID started, so the whole BBC One show was fully all this. So it's been panned for the moment. But I interviewed her as well, and she said, oh yeah, I saw these things myself, Malcolm, and I heard all these knockings. And she was interviewed by Matt Albright, right, from the BBC One show, and she was just basically saying it as it is. And needless to say, it was the story then started to rise. The story then went into the local newspapers. There were only two newspapers at the time in Alloa. That was the Alloa Advertiser and the Alloa Journal. And they just were clamoring over to get quotes from this family. And this is one of the heads, the titles coming from one of the newspapers, December 2nd, 1960. Strange events disturbed Sauchie household. And above it, it says, ghost, poltergeist, or what? And that was the newspapers just trying to get a handle on what was going on, because nothing of that nature had ever happened in Clackmannanshire before. Never, not to that degree. Now, the main researcher on the Sauchie Poltergeist, because like I say, I was only 3 at the time, was a guy called Alan Robert George Owen. And this gentleman here, as the slide depicts, he played a large part in the development of radar technology during World War II. Now, following the war, Dr. Owen became a research fellow and lecturer in mathematics and genetics at Trinity College. So he clearly had a good standing to come up to Scotland and deal with this. The good thing about this fella was that both he and his wife Iris were interested in researching psychic phenomena, psychokinesis and poltergeist. So like I say, he was in a great position to come up to Scotland and find out what's going on with this Sauchie Poltergeist. When he did his investigation, he could clearly see that something was amiss, something was afoot here. In one of his statements, one of his quotes, he said, "It seems evident that the physical phenomena observed by the key witnesses are incompatible with trickery by Virginia or by other children or adults." Now, I'll be playing tomorrow in part 2 of Sauchie Poltergeist case. It's a snippet of a programme from 1964-65. Not the greatest of quality, but you'll see the gentleman, you'll see him and somebody else talking about Sauchie Poltergeist. Part 2 is mostly the audio, the recordings and video. Today, as I say, is just giving you the taster for the case. So do come back for that one. Now, again, it was still happening. It was still happening in Virginia's bedroom. Whilst at home, her pillow was seen to rotate 90 degrees under her head. Her head was on the pillow and it just swiveled round 90 degrees. And also, Virginia's top bed cover, let me go back a bit now, also rippled. And it was like if you had thrown a stone into a mill pond. Just imagine the bed cover there. It started to ripple like waves. And she's lying flat underneath it. She's observed by the doctor and the minister. Like I say, it's like a mill pond, throw a stone and all the ripples, all her covers. It's going like that all over the place. And this was, as I say, witnessed by Reverend Lund, Dr. Logan and Dr. Nisbet. And when the father had sold the family home, the family farm in Ireland, he came back. He was not long in the house when an apple floated out of a fruit bowl and came into his direction, and also his shaving brush was floating around the bathroom. He went into the bathroom and his shaving brush was floating all around it. On another occasion, a pillow next to Virginia's head. She was in bed, a pillow there, nobody's on it. It's like a secondary invisible head depressed into the empty pillow beside Virginia, was seen again by top witnesses, Reverend Lund and Dr. Logan. Also, other wee aspects of that case, a Brillo pad floated out of the kitchen and came into the room. They're all watching the telly, and this wee Brillo pad came out. What the hell's going on here? You know, and it came into the living room. And Virginia was using the Hoover, and it's suddenly the Hoover handle, a wee rubber handle that was on the metal part, flew away. And then a clock came off the living room cabinet and hit Virginia on the nose. Thankfully, it wasn't too hard, but it did make her nose bleed a little. I was led to believe. Another strange aspect of the Sauchie Poltergeist was something that I've not heard a lot, not in all poltergeist cases, and that was that strange writing appeared on the faces of both Virginia and her cousin Margaret. And also Virginia's lips glowed red. It wasn't a case of lipstick or anything like that. It was really, they started to glow really red. And according to Dr. Logan, marks appeared and disappeared on Virginia's hands, although admittedly, he didn't see that himself. Now, this information comes from a diary that was kept by the Campbell family. And Dr. Logan got access to this diary, and it's through his testimony, reading the diary, that I'm presenting these bits of information. More so about the writing on her face and her lips glowing red. Very bizarre. And then it went to more newspapers as well. This is the Alloa Advertiser from December 1960. They're just getting wind of the dignitaries, for want of a better word, coming to the family home. Doctor and minister see Sauchie girl, the strange case of Virginia Campbell. So they're trying to climb over each other to get this amazing story. Followed by a plague of pressmen at Sauchie. Hillfoot's minister condemns the poltergeist visitation. It's a visit. Fair enough. And that was from the 30th of December 1960. This is, I believe, is from the Daily Mail or Sunday Mail, the English one, not the Scottish one. And this is a photograph of Virginia there. The case of the haunted schoolgirl. So not only was the case going nationally within Scotland, it was going right through the United Kingdom, and it also went to Paris and various other newspapers as well. Now, over the course of the next few weeks, strange bangings and rappings continued in the family home. China vases removed themselves. Can you imagine something like that water jug just moving across the table? These type of things were still happening in the Sauchie household in Clackmannanshire. Not this sewing machine, illustrative of a Singer sewing machine. It started all by itself when nobody was near it. On November 25th, 1960, Virginia went to school. As you do. Got to go to school. Everybody does. That's when things got even more bizarre. Bad enough happening in the family home, but when it bloody well follows you to school, that's when it gets even more terrifying, as you will see. Followed her to school. That's the school that happened to. You'll see other photographs. So it's demolished now, but we'll come to that in a minute. Now, this is a typical classroom of the early 1960s. That's not a Sauchie classroom, but it gives you a kind of idea of the type of school. There were upwards of about 40, 50, 60 children in school classrooms at that time, all busy writing away. Well, Sauchie was similar to that. It was just like that as well, very similar to this. This is the actual Sauchie primary school that Virginia attended when all these events transpired, which I'm going to come to some in a moment. And one of the classmates of Virginia, when I showed him this photograph, he says, "You were in her class?" "Ah, yeah, Malcolm, I was in her class. I saw it all, Malcolm." "Oh, I did." Well, out of these windows, what was the main class? What was that one? And that's why we've got the arrow there. That was the classroom that Virginia was in. Again, back in 1960, you had that, didn't you? You had the typical school desk with the place to put your pens or your pencils, the wee inkwell. I just barely remember it, folks, barely. And but that's typical. So that type of desk was in the classroom. Just leading up to the story, that's why that's there. That is a typical desk from the 1960s. So what happened was, the teacher had given them an essay to do. So all the classmates of Virginia are writing away and doing this. Apart from one girl who was not writing her essay. She was like that, trying to put her forearms on the school desk lid. The teacher looks up the class. I see a small faces. Everybody's working away apart from Virginia. Virginia, what are you doing? What are you doing, girl? Nothing, miss, nothing. Stop that at once. So as soon as Virginia lifted her forearms off the desk lid, the desk lid's going up and down like that. And a second desk next to Virginia, which is unoccupied, nobody was there, floated up several inches off the floor and went bang, down again. Can you imagine that in front of a full classroom? You know, the desk lid flapping, etc. Yes, when Virginia went into other classes, the same thing happened as well. Lids would flap up. It sounds like something out of a movie. It sounds like I'm making this up. I'm not making this up. I've spoken to the people, former classmates, are older now, who were in that club. Malcolm, we've seen the bloody thing. I'm not making it up, you know. And now, again, this is not the, I was trying to find a kind of 1960s slide of a teacher's desk, the big teacher's wooden desk, and I couldn't find one, so this will have to suffice to put it into your mind's eye. So what's happening here is as follows. Virginia approached the teacher's jotter. That's my work. And as she placed it down on this desk, there was a cane there. Back in 1960s, the teachers had a big cane, and they pointed to the blackboard. Not all of you will remember it. Probably not. You're too young for that. So they pointed to the blackboard, and as she deposited her jotter down on the desk, this cane, which was lying flat, started to vibrate. Then it started to stand up and end, and thump, boom, 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 down on the desk. And at this, let me see where we go with this one. Again, at this point, and I swear to God, I interviewed the teacher over the phone, Margaret Stewart. I interviewed her. And Malcolm, what happened next was that the desk, this heavy, muckle desk, rose up several centimetres from the floor, and whereas the teacher's stomach was in front of the long part of the desk, it turned round 90 degrees. I swear, and I kid you not. The desk turned round 90 degrees. Her stomach is now in the short part of the desk. Just bear with me and get this slide here. So, I mean, I guess it didn't do it exactly like that, and it's not the type of desk it would have been there in 1960. But that's just, again, to give you an idea. Can you imagine the teacher? This is going round, it's spinning round in front of you. The class were in an uproar. So what happened then was, she realised that, the teacher realised, oh my God, what the hell's going on here? So she went to the door, the classroom door, to let the children out. So she went to, okay children, let's go, let's go. She says, Malcolm, I couldn't open the door. It was like a big heavy man was on the other side of the door. She said, no, you're not coming out, you're not coming out. She says, I couldn't open the door. The door's never been tight like that before. And then she said something like, it must be windy today. You know, maybe the wind's jammed the door shut. And then suddenly, the door just opened. And all the school kids just rushed through this door like a Tom and Jerry cartoon. 3, 4, 5, 6, trying to get to the door like that, you know. It was a crazy scene. And at that point, a vase containing some flower bulbs shot across the teacher's desk as well, moved away. We are going to speak about some of the Poltergeist recordings. As I say, the big part of that's tomorrow. December the 1st, 1960, Dr. Nisbet and Dr. Logan set up a movie camera. This is important. I'll tell you why in a moment. And sound recording equipment in Virginia's bedroom. It's okay to have witnesses, but you need proof. What constitutes proof? And I've said it in all my talks. You could have the best photograph of a ghost or a UFO. Oh, you've made that on computer, Malcolm. We're living in the Steven Spielberg age. That's good job, Malcolm. How can you convince anybody of the reality of spirit or of UFOs? It doesn't always mean to say that it's a good photograph. It's pure testimony as well, what you've seen. So they set up a cine camera and recording equipment. And when they did that, there were a number of noises that was heard and recorded, some barely perceptible from tappings to agitated knocks. And again, there was the occasional rippling of the bed covers. There was also, and this is a strange thing as well, it was like hysterical babbling or talking by Virginia. It's like she's been taken over and some incoherent words were pouring out of her mouth that made gobbledygook. A cleansing ceremony was done. That was done by the Church of Scotland at 11 p.m. and during which loud knockings could be heard as if to say, I don't like this, I don't want you to chase me away, bang, bang, bang. All these knockings were heard. You'll hear that tomorrow. And yes, well, tomorrow I say that. Knocking sounds heard Virginia on the air. So this was then sent to the local radio station, Radio Scotland. And again, it made the local press as well. Sauchie ghost on the air. Ministers and doctors sum up. Now, after the exorcism on December the 1st, things did admittedly calm down. All these knockings and bangings and bed covers going and writings on the faces all stopped. And Virginia made a new friend at school called Elizabeth. And she also named her poltergeist Wee Huey. Well, everybody have a name, so she called it Wee Huey. That was the name of the poltergeist. Now, during the first, that's not the bedroom, that's just indicative of a 1960s style kind of bedroom. During the first 3 months of 1961, there were knockings at the bed at night. There was a sound of someone walking across the bedroom floor. And the girls also reported being poked on the body and legs while lying in bed. They also claimed they were getting nipped. And it wasn't each other. Sometimes both girls were in the same bed at the same time. Other times they weren't, but they were getting nipped on parts of their body. And there was also, they got punched, as was a visitor to the house. Got nipped and punched, walking in. Oh, folks, bang. Can you imagine it? Poor bugger. Now, during this time, poltergeist effects is slowly winding down. And a few objects did move around by themselves in the family home, but the events were clearly diminishing in their intensity. And by April 1961, the poltergeist events had stopped entirely. And Virginia was back at school because she couldn't go to school. All the kids were terrified. Oh, that's a ghosty girl. I'm not wanting to sit next to her. So they actually stopped poor Virginia going to school. But eventually she did return to school after things starting to kind of diminish. And we have this headline here, Virginia is now returning to normal. And Dr. Nisbet, even though he saw he heard the knockings and he saw the bed covers move, he says, the child had nothing to do with a poltergeist. What was he thinking about? He heard and saw these things himself. Was that too much for him? Who knows? Now, just before the events did start to diminish, and it's during the time when it was in intensity, maybe we should move Virginia to another house. What about, and it was an auntie's house in a nearby town of Dollar. It's about, 6 miles away from Sauchie. Yeah, let's put Virginia to Dollar. You know what's coming, don't you? As soon as they moved her to the town of Dollar, bang, 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 things happened there. So no matter where she went, Dollar, happening. Sauchie school, happening. Our own house, happening. These events were transpiring no matter where she was. So, that's what to look at. So I did a reinvestigation in 84, 87 and 1994. And I tracked down an auntie family when I lived in Sauchie. First of all, I moved away later. And yes, can I help you? Sorry to bother you, madam. My name's Malcolm Robinson. I'm a researcher. I look into the strange aspects of the paranormal, etc. I believe you're the auntie of Virginia Campbell. Yes. Why? I just want to ask you a few quick questions. About what? About Virginia. Oh, do you? The door slammed in my face. I've never had that happen to me in over 40 years of investigation. You know, and it happened only about, what, 50, 100 yards away from where I lived in Sauchie. And I don't blame her. She wanted to put it behind her. The family didn't want anything more to do with it. I don't blame her. And as I said, I spoke to the teacher, Margaret Stewart. I then tracked down a number of Virginia's classmates. It was so important to get word from, not so much the horse's mouth. I'll tell you more about Virginia later. But certainly the people who were in the classroom at the time. I needed to track them down, and I did. I managed to track down some, but not all. As they grew older, some people emigrated, some people sadly passed away to spirit. So I got maybe about half a dozen former classmates of Virginia Campbell. Last year, I did a new investigation, and I decided that, okay, I've got to track down the former classmates. What I really need to do is track down Virginia Campbell herself. Bear with me. So, I initially thought maybe she went back to Ireland, maybe she went back to Donegal. I sent off to the newspapers, excuse me, Donegal Post, Donegal on Sunday, and the Donegal News. And I wrote to them, I think it's here in the next slide. Let's have a look. The first clue, am I going back? Okay, let me go back to that one. I'm saying I was trying to find the relatives of the Virginia Campbell and her family, and I gave all the aunties and uncles' names, the families, the brothers, the sisters, and it drew a blank. So, right, okay, fair enough. Where do I go now? So, what I did then was, when we did that thing for the BBC One show, Sheila Logan's house, her husband, Dr. Logan, passed away. And she said, I've still got some stuff from the newspapers and things when I was back in 1960, Malcolm, if you want to see them. Oh, yeah, what you got? Well, I've got this letter for the Sunday Mirror. And when I read this bit, I won't read it all, it's this bit I'm going to read. When I read this, I went, wow, this is great. That's what that part said. And, oh, sorry, this is from, let me go back. It's from the Daily Mirror Newspaper Limited, but it's from the Sunday Mirror, May 19th, 1965. So this journalist had said, since meeting you, I have concluded a contract with Virginia's parents in Bedford. Whoa, Bedford? Really? So that's great. And I have also met the young lady herself. So that was great. So there, I had now had a link to where she was moved from now, Bedford. That's good. Big place, Bedford. But, you know, it's... So I wrote a letter to the Bedford Independent, and I was telling a wee white lie. White lie, yes. Because what I said was, I'm trying to research the Campbell family tree. And they initially came from Donegal in Ireland, settled in Sauchie, Scotland, and I believe somewhere in Bedford during the 1960s. The names are Annie and James Campbell and their daughter Virginia. Virginia would have been around 15 or 16 at the time of the move to Bedford. So I put that out there, and I couldn't believe it. I got some fantastic hits from that, which I'll show you just now. Oh, before I got that fantastic hit, by the way, I also put information on Kempston community, because I was told that she had then moved from Bedford to Kempston, which is a small town, I believe, adjacent, sits next to Bedford. And so I put things on the Facebook Kempston community. I used to live in Kempston. We are Bedford and Bedford memories. Again, saying I'm trying to track down the relatives of Virginia or Virginia herself. Can anybody help? And it's Daisy Watson. That's not her real name. It's Denise Willis, I think it is. So I'm going to play you a piece of audio just now. This is, the lady's about 82 years of age. So we can just go to that. Deirdre, well, this one. And so this lady is about 82 years of age. And this is what she said. Oh, I had a bad cough at the time. Terrible coffee at that time.
Was Beryl, Irene and Vera sisters or relatives of
Oh no, it's okay, it doesn't matter, just leave it there. Sorry.
They're all sisters. I kind of thought that.
confirmation, because I knew them already, but I just wanted to get confirmation.
So they died in Bedford, yeah. Yes, they did. And you mentioned that, excuse me, my sore throat tonight. You mentioned that there was a story about Virginia with a poltergeist. Tell me more about that. I may have a look at that for sure. Do you mean that the poltergeist was with her in Scotland or in Bedford? Okay. And now comes Kingston, not
So basically, she was saying there that not only did the poltergeist occur in Sauchie in Scotland, it also followed her down to Bedford and then Kempston as well. And that was incredible. This is one of the... How long have I got? I've got to watch my time. 20 past. I'm not too bad then. This is Peter Johnson. He was a great portrayer of the information about... He was a classmate of Virginia, and he says, Malcolm, you should have seen what I saw. I couldn't, that was him when he was 12. Poltergeist recordings. Very briefly, this is London Weekend Television got involved with this. And this was a Helen Cook approaching Dr. Logan to get information. And she says, I also understand you and your partner, Dr. Nisbet, it should be Dr. Logan, filmed on film and tape, recorded some events in Virginia's room at the time she was ill. So London Weekend was going to do this program about it. And basically what happened was that I wanted to know where the cine film was and the audio tapes as well. And I wrote to London Weekend Television, they're not them anymore, ITN. Thanks for the inquiry and apologies for the delay in replying. The letter from Helen Cook was researched from the programme Britain's Most Terrifying Ghost Stories and transmitted on the 23rd of November 2001. And it goes on to say that the library didn't have enough details to tell us where the Sauchie story was featured, and he couldn't find the transmission of the master tapes, etc. So what I'm saying by this is, where the bloody hell is this cine tape footage of the Sauchie Poltergeist? Is it in some dusty old filing cabinet somewhere in the confines of a TV studio? We haven't got that. Thankfully, what we have got, and you'll hear it tomorrow, is the sounds of the Sauchie Poltergeist. And this is Virginia Campbell at 15. This is taken of a piece of footage that I'll be playing tomorrow, a short 10-minute movie of the Sauchie Poltergeist. So this is her at 15 years of age. But did the Sauchie Poltergeist really disappear? Because, ladies and gentlemen, after the Campbells had moved out, this house was obviously occupied by various other families. I couldn't trace all the families until about 2003. I spoke to a lady called Nicola Bernard. They moved into this same house in 2003, many years later. And she says, Malcolm, there would be putrid smells near the back door that they couldn't account for. These horrible smells. It wasn't the drainage or anything like that. They checked all that. Her 5-year-old son, this is the same house. The 5-year-old son claimed to have seen a lady in his bedroom who frightened him. And also, this is Nicola here. Nicola also saw this strange lady just out of the corner of her eye. And her 5-year-old son also said that his bed covers would change colour. There was also horrible feelings in the back bedroom, and there were constant loud bangs throughout the house. And the kettle would switch itself on and off as well in this house. And we did a big piece for one of the Scottish newspapers, a page spread about it, because, and you'll see this in a moment, because it was a whole street, had ghosts in it, and I'll come to that in a minute. 19 Park Crescent, this is not now, this is the same house, so come to the other ones. She says, this is Ellen McLeish, she was in from 2003 to 2014. She says, Malcolm, I can honestly say in the 14 years that Jim and I stayed in this house, nothing paranormal happened. My grandchildren stayed there sometimes, and again, nothing happened. So it didn't always seem to happen with various families. But what's so special about Park Crescent and the area where the poltergeist happened? Well, as I said, there were ghosts right up and down this street. It wasn't just that house, one house. For instance, 17 Park Crescent, the McDonald's from 1970 to 1984. My mum moved into that house in late 1969, and she lived there for 14 years. My mum said there were always activities, but when we first moved in, the sockets used to fly out of the walls, doors would open and close. We had scratching noises like a mouse behind the units, cold, eerie feelings. My aunt would not come into the house. She said that the hair stood up on her neck and her arms. I used to sleepwalk in the house and had an imaginary friend, which I believe was all linked to this place. Another house in the street, 30. That was 17 Park Crescent. This is 30 Park Crescent. Mandy Maxwell. Cupboards and doors would open and close of their own accord. She claimed she was pinned against a wall by an invisible force and also pushed down the stairs by an invisible force as well. The family was so scared that all 6 of them moved into one room, and a dark, semi-transparent figure was seen in the home, which had a rippling effect going through its body, this rippling effect all through it. Crucifixes were pinned onto all the door frames throughout the house. The people were terrified. Again, in the same house, 30 Park Crescent, the father said to the local paper, seeing the poltergeist on a daily basis now. And I've been told that it's come back to the house because we've got a young family. If it gets any worse, then I'll take the mattress and move my family into the car. Imagine taking the family to the house, moving into the car. So what's so special about Park Crescent? What was on the land before Park Crescent? I've only got about 4 minutes or so to go. What was on the land before it? Well, nothing special. Nothing special. Here's a aerial reconnaissance photograph from 1940s. So I think it was in the 1950s that the house was built. And this was Park Crescent here. It's not here at the moment, obviously. But it was just fields, farmers' fields. You had a football park. You may see the outline there, in there. So there were no burial grounds or anything like that to constitute perhaps something paranormal happening. Old Sauchie Primary School, you saw a photograph earlier on. It's now demolished. These were kind of the typical examples of how a Scottish school would be. That's the house today, photograph taken by Gary Mackenzie. It's got this wee veranda type thing there. It's pretty much the same structure, of course. This is where Sauchie School used to stand. It's now houses. And it makes me wonder if any strange things are happening in where the school used to be, or if any occupants of these houses are experiencing anything. Again, just where the Sauchie School used to be. Now, what I would say in summing up part 1 of today's lecture is don't cover your eyes to the paranormal. Don't turn away from it. Because just because something sounds and looks ridiculous doesn't mean to say that it is so. So don't laugh at it. We laughed at John Logie Baird, that wonderful Scots guy who invented the television, although some say a French guy did it at the same time. We laughed at John Logie Baird. That'll never work. Oh, sorry, it's worked, hasn't it? Yes, it's worked. We laughed at the Wright brothers. That'll never fly. Oh, sorry, it's flown, isn't it? It's flown. So we laughed at Thomas Edison. All these pioneers. Okay, this is a total different ballpark, of course, but we laughed at, you should never laugh at things just because it sounds and looks ridiculous, because you just never know. And like I say, we were filming in the Mansfield for the BBC One show. That's me and Matt Allwright. I just hope that programme comes out this year. It's only 5 minutes long. I'm speeding up now because I'm watching my time. He was doing a piece to camera in the pouring rain, and cars were coming back, toot, 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 so I had to stop the filming and do it again. That's Sheila Logan, filmed just last year by the one show, Matt Albright, or is it Albright? I can never remember. And telling that. So basically, it was a wonderful case, an absolutely fantastic case. And I want you all to be back here tomorrow. I think it's 9:50. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 9:50. That's when I'll be playing the audio tape of the Sauchie Poltergeist sounds, and also a part of the television showing young Virginia as well. And you'll hear all these doctors and also the ministers talking about that case. And like I always say in my talks, the human mind is like a parachute. Please, and it works so much better when it's open, so keep your minds open. And that's great. Has anybody got any quick questions before I finish? No? Not yet? Keep it till tomorrow. That's great. So listen, have a wonderful weekend. It's been a pleasure to come back to Bournemouth. Thanks, Ashley, for having me back again. Gentlemen, yeah? Yes, yes, they do. And not just poltergeists, but you do get some spirits you can... Yeah. And we did a case with GMTV years ago. I was working with Lorraine Kelly and Eamon Holmes. That's how long ago it was, 1993. Musical instrument. It was a wee toy guitar. No batteries in it. It was playing itself. No batteries in it. It was playing itself. So yeah, to answer your question, they can interact with musical instruments for sure. Yes, lady. There's no trace there just now. When we heard she moved to Kempston, we had a journalist from one of the Kempston newspapers. He says, let me try and find through the electoral roll, but she's married now. She's got a new surname. But he managed to track her down to this house. At least he thinks it was. Yes, can I help you? Yeah, sorry to bother you. I'm a journalist. We're looking for Virginia Campbell. I believe it might be you. No, it's not me. No. And he says, Malcolm, her persona, he says, I'm convinced that was Virginia Campbell of today. But she was denying it. It might not have been, but we're still trying to find her because she would hold the world. It was like Janet Hodgson from the Enfield Poltergeist, that young girl and her sisters. They had the mainstay of the story, but we're still trying to find her. Yes. Yes. Oh, she lives in Bedford and her grandson's in Kempston. I'm going home with you then, ain't I? Just look. Your head does not spin round. I'm not believing a word. So listen, I've got to wrap up. Thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen. Plug. Lovely. So I'll leave you with there. Thanks very much. Be back here at 9:50 tomorrow.